It says that you did professional gaming.
Yeah, I was one of the original people, old, back in the day that played video games for a living. And so back in the 90s, way back in the 90s, kids, um, there was a little company out of Boulder, Colorado. Most of the game companies back then were in Southern California. There wasn't even really that many overseas that did anything. And I won a tournament, a computer pinball tournament for a little company. The developer was out of Tokyo named Little Wing, and they're still out there. And the publisher was out of Boulder, Colorado. They were transplants of California, and the company was named Star Play. And they called me up, and they I won the tournament, and one of the prizes was to have me test their brand new game, which was called Looney Labyrinth, which is another pinball game, and I hated it. I wrote this scathing review. It's like, oh my god, because I was a really good pinball player in real life stuff. And I said, oh, there's so many things wrong with this. And the big thing was it was too easy. You could get too many extra balls, and basically, if you were even a half decent pinball player, you basically just collapse from exhaustion because
Yeah.
the game would never end. And they liked my review so much, they said, why don't you come out and interview for a job? And so I flew out during a snowstorm and interviewed with them, and got to it was a blast. It was the best 2 3 years of my life as far as software goes, because I get to travel around to the early conferences, MacWorld Boston and MacWorld San Francisco and E3 and stuff like that, and make play games and talk to all the
Yeah.
gamer guys, and rub elbows with gamers that would be famous later, game companies basically that would be famous later. And it was so much fun. And then like all small publishing companies, you either get absorbed or you eventually die. And they finally closed shop, and that was it. And then I went on to teach proprietary software for the better part of 20 years out in Colorado.
Yeah. So what exactly does that mean, teaching proprietary software? Is that like
So, like, for example, there's a lot of software packages out there that people have never heard of, and so they're proprietary. They're not publicly traded. They're very unique packages. Like in this case, time and attendance software is what I did. So this would be time tracking software, not time travel or anything weird like that. It
yeah, like
was
clocking in at work?
exactly that's exactly what it is. And it is very, very customizable. So it's a very broad package because your rules for overtime and rounding and vacation pay and sick pay and all that, it varies from state to state and even county to county. So you had to make these custom software packages and tweaks for all these companies and make special interfaces for them and charge ridiculous amounts of money for some of these packages. We're talking about timekeeping software, and we were charging 20, 50, 80 grand for
Oh
these
yeah.
for these packages, and but you have to train people on it. So for a number of years, I traveled around the United States and some outside the United States into blue collar companies, because that timekeeping is mostly for factory people, and I would teach these blue collar workers how to run the software. And that's what you learned how to not necessarily dumb things down, but remove the stuff that they wouldn't use, to give them. It's like, okay, here are the exact basics you need to use to run this software. You don't need any of these other features. Like anything, I mean, there's lots of stuff in everything. Like there's most of the settings on your television you're not going to use, and your sound system and your computer even. You're not going to use all this stuff. You're just going to use this. And so I got really good at boiling down things into the basic components, and that's what I did, and got to travel into just about every town in the country that you never even knew existed, or you would never ever go into on vacation. So you'd fly into a big airport, and then maybe fly to a smaller airport from that big airport, and then get a rental car and drive another 30, 45 minutes to some town in the middle of nowhere, and hope they had a Chinese buffet, because that was one of my weaknesses. So yeah, so I did.
Yeah. I do have to say, working on the commercial end, I also used to work. basically directly for companies.
Hmm.
It's so good just because companies will really they'll pay you just about anything if you do the job well.
They will. Our problem was because I had to do support on the other end. So when I wasn't traveling, I was doing software support for this package. And payroll software is mission critical. You know, if your payroll package goes down on payroll day and you've got 300 people lined up in tank tops
Oh yeah.
waiting for their paycheck, oh, you freak out. And people would call and just lose it. I mean, I had people crying, people threatening, people yelling. You know, I even had like a fixer call me up once. You better fix this package, or we'll be coming for you. It's like what? You know, come on. Um, so it was, yeah, they would pay anything though. You know, to have this. I mean, any because timekeeping software was basically to keep the employees from ripping you off, even though technically you ripped them off first because you were paying them such a crappy wage to begin with.
Mhm.
So you know that's how people in blue collar got around things. They would figure out a way to work the system, and so the timekeeping software was meant to turn the balance in the company's favor. So it was this weird game that we would play, and I mean, hell, I mean, I helped even put people in jail that would like rip off the system. And they weren't even the factory workers; they were the administrators. Ugh,
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. So if I'm getting this right, after proprietary software, what you would do is you would try to debunk these conspiracy theories. And when you got to
Well,
flat Earth,
that was during another company. So after proprietary software, well, no, I was still doing. Then I was doing internet research for a staffing company of all things. They had a really unique business model. I've had some interesting companies to work for, and while I was doing that, here's the big thing. The big thing was during all that because I was doing a lot of business travel, or I just wasn't. My social situation was just chaotic. That I never married or had kids, and if you don't ever get married or have kids, you have a lot of free time on your hands.
mhm,
Tons of free time.
yeah,
You don't understand it. People because most people get married. You know, by the time you're
right,
hitting, pushing 30, most people are already married. I know it's a little different now, but for a lot of my friends, that they were married, in their mid 20s.
right,
And so I absorbed a huge amount of media. So not only did I watch a lot of TV and go to the movie theater every weekend, that I could, as long as there was a decent movie out there, I went every weekend, and sometimes I'd even go Saturday and Sunday. And because I didn't want to wait for my friends, because they were married or doing or whatever. It's like screw it, I'll go watch a movie by myself. I don't care. And then playing a lot of games because I was still, a lifelong gamer. Between all those things, the other thing that kind of surfaced was when YouTube came out, because YouTube has a lot of conspiracies on it. It took a while for them to get forward. I mean, there used to be dedicated websites, especially like after 9/11,
mhm,
but YouTube really just amped things up. And so I watched, again, absorbed a lot of it. It's like, yeah, 9/11, that's pretty interesting. Bigfoot having Elvis's baby, probably not as much.
mhm.
Not, not,
Wait,
not.
is that a real conspiracy theory?
No, I don't think it actually is, but it wouldn't
Okay.
surprise me if it was.
Yeah,
Be-
that's why I had to ask.
Well, I'm mixing. It's like, the Bigfoot thing. I'm from the Northwest, and so is it
Yeah.
possible there's a primate running around that nobody's ever seen? Yeah, possible. Is Elvis still alive? There's that. I mean, that's a thing too. Some people say, "Oh, Elvis never died,"
Right.
but apparently, in the conspiracy world, nobody ever dies.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always somebody that's still kicking around that's pretending to be somebody else. It's like, come on, people die, or people are killed. But that's when I got into this. I mean, I'd looked at just about every conspiracy you could think of, and still refused to look at flat Earth. Hated it. It's like, ugh. Don't want to look at it because everyone knows it's the stupidest conspiracy ever. And it's not even a conspiracy; it's that stupid, right? That's the logic. And then I looked at it, and I thought, okay, I will bring my skills to bear and shut this thing down, and move on and put it in the Elvis Presley classification.
Mhm.
It didn't happen. In fact, it was the exact opposite. I could not resolve it. Could
Yeah,
not get
just
an
stuck.
answer that was good enough for me. So finally, that's when I made a series of videos at the beginning of 2015 and said, okay, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to make a series of videos and I'm just going to keep putting them out there until somebody answers that can convince me It's like, look, I can't prove the globe in a court of law anymore. Can't do it. Now, can I go the other way, with flat Earth and prove a flat Earth? No, but I can shoot more holes in the globe now than I can a flat Earth by a huge margin. And that's where everything just started falling to pieces because people started coming to me from different professions stating, like Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, pilots, air traffic controllers, engineers, those type of people. And they all kept saying the same thing. It's like, yeah, you know what? You're not nuts. Here's why. Saying you may be onto something. It's like, and that's not what I wanted to hear. It's like, what? No, tell me, please let it end. And they were the ones that really they put the final convincing on me. Where the first 6 months, I think, of 2015, I was going, okay, maybe someone's going to come back with something, and instead it just kept getting reinforced and reinforced until finally I was all in. And I had heard, because I had answered so many of my own questions in the first 9 months, and everybody else filled in the blanks for me and came up with those things, and now it's just, as you know, it's just gotten huge at this point.
Yeah.
I lost count of the interviews, the documentary, the commercial, couple books, all this stuff, and I didn't have to even lift a finger. It just kept happening on its own, and I'm a big believer in fate. So it's like, okay, whatever's happening now is for a reason, and it just keep seeming to fall in line without really any much effort on our part. I mean, yeah, we've had some people do some amazing things, but as a whole, we've almost gotten no resistance.
Yeah. So speaking on that, when you say you're a strong believer in faith, is that like a spiritual thing, or just is it actually like religious?
Uh, it's interesting because, and I said this in the clues. I was raised a born again Christian. Went to Vacation Bible School in Camp Malibu, and church was not just a Sunday thing. Grew up kind of in the '80s and early '90s when the island that I grew up on, it was very, very strong. But it was a very sheltered rural environment, and so when I went off to university, I actually found out there was more than one religion. Go figure. And that there was this big world out there that I didn't even know of. I was very naive. And so I fell away. I didn't go to church. Why would I? I mean, there's all these new things to learn, and so it was still in the back of my mind. And then I got into tech, which is not necessarily anti-church, but it's really heavy science fiction, which there's no room for religion in that, unless you're talking about the Force. But that's a whole nother thing. And then when I got into flat Earth, it changed everything. And I've heard this from a lot of people. At least half our membership, I say membership like it's a formal thing, at least half of our members are diehard Christians, at least in the United States and in parts of Canada. And what they all said was, the same thing applied to me. It brought me back to spirituality. Now, do I go to church with the same sort of level, that I had before? No. In fact, I still really haven't gone back to church. But I have so much more of a respect. I've got a deeper respect for the whole side of spirituality, to where I can't even condemn any of the five major religious houses of the world, because I think they've all got pieces of the same puzzle. But do I believe in a creator now more than ever? Yes, because if it is a building, if it's a structure, then it was built by someone, and it's either an advanced civilization that's older than ourselves or a deity. And at that point, you're really just splitting hairs, because one man's golden spaceship is another man's god.
Right. So you mentioned before you got into the flat Earth conspiracy,
Yeah.
you didn't really like it. Did you ever kind of wonder, like, why does it matter if the Earth is flat, or what? How does it change?
I did. No, that's an excellent question, and many people have asked me that. It's like, why does it matter? The longer version is, it's like, my wife hates me, my kids don't listen to me, my job sucks. I still got to go to it in the morning. Why do I care? And I tried to tell them, it's like, well, you won't care unless you believe it, and if you believe it, all of a sudden everything changes. Because it changes the universe from this little rock flying through space that means nothing and you're an accident with no purpose, to a building that was built for you, exactly for you. And even though I can't tell you exactly what your purpose is, you have a purpose, you have meaning. And that's a powerful thing to put out to any civilization. So, and it's part of the three-pronged problem of releasing this to the public. So let's say the powers that be didn't figure this thing out till like 1960. Do you tell the public? Probably not. Not then. You don't. Academically, every university in every state in every country would have to be rebuilt. The physical foundations of all science, physical sciences, archaeology, biology, geology, take your pick. They all have to be rebuilt. Libraries would have to be cleared out and restocked. It would take years. That's academic chaos. Then you have the world markets. World markets have to be suspended for months just to figure out what it means. I mean, look what the frickin' virus has done in just a couple of weeks to the markets. It's utter nuts out there, and that's just a virus. And then, of course, the spirituality thing. You know, the five major religious houses that I was talking about. You're telling the five big houses of the world: Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, that they now have leverage against science, who's been beating them over the head with textbooks for the last 5 centuries. You're telling them to show restraint. So it's not. I like to rephrase it for people because they say who benefits, who gets the advantage if it's a flat world. I go, it's not who benefits, who has something to lose. Because if you don't know until 1960 for sure that that's what it looks like, you've already built your civilization. The infrastructure is already there. Everything's already been built. It's what could be torn down. So you basically could lose a lot, and you're not going to take that risk. Nobody would. I wouldn't. I'd be like, nope, not a chance. I would hold on to this until you had a way of putting it out to the public in which you could control the narrative. And that is something I think that's what we're into now. I mean, look, the infrastructures that we have built now is ready for it. High-speed internet, social media, 6 billion smartphones. I mean, more people have smartphones than have running water. And now you could push that narrative out if you want. I mean, again, I didn't create Flat Earth. None of my friends created Flat Earth. In fact, we're seemingly doing the legwork for whoever's out there. We're running basically unopposed, which is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, why the three major faces of science, the three social media scientists have not come out against us directly, it's staggering.
Yeah, you mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of reasons you wouldn't want to put it out there that the Earth is flat to the public right now.
Right.
But then I would question, why in the first place did they tell us it was a globe?
I talked about this in the clues a little bit, which is if you don't turn this world into a globe, at least metaphorically, or at least change the perception into a globe, you run the risk of people finding out too early. Meaning civilization is the only thing that slows it down is the level of its technology. So, and you remember the car, the internal combustion engine, which runs everything. We've only had that for 100 years, give or take. And what happens? So, if you do not tell people that the world is a globe, what happens is the old legends, the old myths, because again, you can look up ancient cosmologies, and they all drew the same thing. They drew this snow globe. That eventually people are going to start thinking, wow, when we get our stuff up and running, when we get stuff better than ships and horses, we're going to look. We're going to look for ourselves. And so you've got to introduce this quickly, and because people only think about the boundaries. And it was something I talked about in one of the videos where I likened it to a wildlife preserve. So in a wildlife preserve, you take, let's say it's 1,000 acres, give or take. You put some buffaloes in there, stream, some grass, trees. They're happy. They're nothing. You put any animal in there, they are going to be you give them enough room, they're great. Doesn't matter if there's a fence there or not. They don't care. They're not even going to go near the fence. Like, I'm going out there. It's going to be fun. You put a dozen people in that same wildlife preserve. All they're going to care about is that freaking edge. They're going to care about the fence. Who built the fence? Why are we on this side of the fence? What's on the other side of the fence? Did we anger the fence makers? Maybe we should sacrifice something to the gods of the fence. Grab the buffalo. And that's how it goes. I mean, welcome to religion and how things start. And so that's why you do it. You've got to, the only way to do it is to get rid of it. The fence is tell people there is no fence, and make sure the fence is so far out there and filled with so much negative reinforcement that anyone heading towards it turns around on their own behalf. You don't guard it. That's the last thing you'd want to do with big old frost giants with giant axes saying, "Dude, you shall not pass." That would be the worst thing ever, because people, all they care about is the freaking frost giants. So you just do a lot of ice and snow and no animal life and no plant life, and that's it. People turn back on their own and everything's great. I mean, the design, it's very, very clever. I mean, that was the thing for me. I kept staring at this thing, going, all right, how would I build it? And how would I keep the population from knowing it as long as possible? But sooner or later, the technology reaches a level that they're going to detect it. Sooner or later, 5,000 years, 6,000 years, doesn't make any difference. You won't be able to hide it forever. It's kind of like hiding cigarettes from your roommate. You can move around here and there. You can get clever. One of these days, they're going to find it. And then you hope they don't smoke.
Yeah. So you do believe that there is an ice wall around us, which would be like the Antarctic?
Oh, yeah. But it's not... When people say the ice wall, it's too simplistic when you say it like that, because Game of Thrones did us no favors. Because that's what everyone thinks of. It's like, oh my God, it's the giant ice wall from Game of Thrones. It's like, no, when you get to the Antarctic, even before you get to the beach, it's icebergs all the way around. I mean, it's horrible. It's really, really bad. Ship people don't like going there. And then when you can get to the beach, most of the beachhead, the coastline of Antarctica is ice, 150 feet up, right? And if you can get on top of it, that's when it starts getting really interesting, because if the whole thing starts plateauing up really, really high, it supposedly plateaus at around 7,000 feet. And that's amazing. I mean, it's the most unique continent, even by mainstream standards, is very, very unique. I mean, altitude sickness kicks in at what, 4,000? Not even 7,000 feet, as far as I know. And wait, am I thinking the wrong thing? No, 14,000 feet. 14,000 feet. I'm sorry. I screwed up my facts there. No, it plateaus at 14,000 feet, which is ridiculous. Altitude sickness kicks in at 7. And so at that point, you're not talking about an ice wall. You're talking about an ice continent. So, and then what we're saying there is the barrier that when you actually get to the actual boundary of this thing, it's probably another 1,000 miles inland. Because the United States Navy was flying around there for the better part of 30 years looking for it, from the 20s all the way up until the 50s. And that's when I think they found it. They found it right, during Operation Deep Freeze, 1955-56. And that's when they closed it down. They started writing up the Antarctic Treaty, and that's it. The Antarctic Treaty is bulletproof. It's the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties. It's not even a secret. If you're a country and you have a corporation and you want to set up shop there, you can't forever. Mm-hmm. No reason given. It's like, well, now they can say environmentalism, but it's like, what were you saying in 1959? Environmentalism wasn't even a word back in 1959.
Right. And so what's your idea about what might be behind that ice continent?
I like to think that sorry, people keep messaging me. I'd like to think that it is a unlimited universe, maybe more versions of this, because remember, we're talking about a fairly small place. If there is no space, if there is no giant universe, then you could have dozens of these damn things if you wanted to, or other continents, or more lands. What I like to tell people is try, because I'm a big believer in dualism. That, you can't appreciate something without its opposite, hot without cold, pain without pleasure, so on and so on. And this world appears to be made out of 99% conflict. I mean, it's amazingly, it's something that people miss. But everyone kind of gets it. It doesn't matter how rich, how powerful, how beautiful, how talented you are. Everybody complains about something. And they've got, which is amazing. You'd think, like when you're a rock star, all rock stars want to be is athletes. Most people don't know that. And all the athletes want to be rock stars. You'd think you'd be happy with one of those two. People that have mansions complain about the servants. People that have amazing looks, all they care about is, making sure they maintain it, and they can't because of entropy. We get older. So if this world is 99% conflict, and it's almost inescapable as far as I can tell, even if you're a monk chanting in the Himalayan mountains, doing that, the whole thing and trying to grasp serenity, you're still going to die. Monks don't live 1,000 years, and even if they did, they still die. Then whatever's outside of this world has to be 99% unlimited. So, because I think that's one of the reasons why we're here. I think we're here to appreciate what's on the other side, because you can't do one without the other. We've seen it time and time again. Trust fund children are always a mess. If you give someone too much conflict when they're young, they end up being traumatized and they can't function as adult. You pamper them too much, and their motivation flags, and it goes on and on. So yeah, outside this world, I think unlimited universe.
Have you heard about the conspiracies that go into finding these giant human bones underground?
Oh,
like
sure.
Giant bones, like giants.
Yeah, I've heard of them. And again, I'd like to say it's not one of my favorites, obviously, but I have a certain opinion about. But I'm not going to shoot it down. No, not by a long shot, because there's certain anomalies that happen out there which we can't explain. One of the big ones is I throw people, the Loch Ness monster, for example. I say, they call it a monster, but we're really just talking about a plesiosaur, from the Jurassic era. It's like, okay, are there dinosaurs swimming around Loch Ness? And you say no. And I say, why not? It's like, well, they were obviously extinct at least 70 million years ago, or at least 100 million years ago, or more. And I say, okay, fine. Take a look at this fish. It's called a coelacanth. Anyone could look it up. And it's spelled Coelcanth. Coelacanth. Found the fossil records. Really unattractive fish. Extinct 70 million years. Every scientist in the world. Sorry, people keep messaging me.
Yeah, you're good.
That's all right. Yes.
When I was
No, wait.
when I was
I gotta get this out. So 70 million years, they're extinct, and yet every scientist in the world would have bet the freaking farm that this thing was dead for at least 70 million years, and then they caught one off of South Africa, and the British military, and then the another one off of Mozambique, and then Madagascar, and it turns out outside of Africa, they're all over the place.
Right.
So how did science screw up that badly? And what's more important is, hadn't they caught it, had that fish been more elusive, science would still be ridiculing it, even now. It's like, if a fisherman says, oh, I caught one of those rod and reel just last week, science would be laughing at him and say, oh, it's a drunk fisherman with a fishtail. It's like, no, it wasn't. It absolutely was real. And so now I come back and I say, tell me again how there are no dinosaurs swimming around Loch Ness. Because you can't use because they've been extinct for a really long time. The billy ape that was found, 5 years ago? A chimpanzee, 6 feet tall, which is really shy around people, thank God, because we probably would have wiped it out by now. Chimpanzee, 6 feet tall. In fact, they still can't catch a live one. I mean, they're too damn agile. So when you say, there's no primates living around in other forests because we haven't caught any, it's like, we didn't even know the billy ape was a thing. I mean, not to delve too much into like cryptozoology, but look at, everything we had at one point was a myth. Because science I haven't seen it, therefore it's a unicorn. The giant panda was a myth. The giant anaconda was a myth. And one of my favorites, the frickin' giant squid, which still has never been. The only reason we even knew they existed is because when they would do fights with sperm whales, the only things that can kill them apparently, they would leave sucker marks on the side of these things the size of garbage can lids. and we can't catch one. Not a big one. I mean, yeah, a small one will die, wash up on some shore, but the big ones we cannot catch. Our best subs cannot catch. I mean, I suppose we could nuke one, but you're not going to catch it. They dive deeper than our subs. They're faster than anything out there. You don't ever want to send divers. You're never going to get a diver down that far anyway. So, but scientists will at least admit they exist because they found pieces of them somewhere else. That's the part of that science that drives me nuts, which is science is only right until the day that it isn't. And when they're proved wrong, if it's concrete enough, they just envelop it into science. It's like, well, it's ours now. It's like, what? You were fighting us? Like the coelacanth fish. They didn't know what to do. Did not know what to do. It took them years to finally acknowledge it. And then they find, well, it's a living fossil. And it's in an evolutionary state of stasis, which means it's not evolving, but it might one day. It's like, you're just making this shit up. It's like, oh, right. It's so unsatisfying. I'm sorry, I ramble.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I was just saying that with the bones. Let's say these are giant human bones. What if this is a sort of Attack on Titan situation where there's giants behind the wall? Do you think that's plausible?
Wouldn't surprise me. Why would I shoot that down? How? In fact, I will not ever be a hypocrite. That's one thing that Flat Earth changed for me. Beforehand, and I said this literally in the beginning of my very first clue, where I had friends that would, probably like your friend, right? That swear to you that the entire royal family of England are made up of lizard people, right?
Yeah.
Swear to you this. And I will come at them and go, oh, that's interesting. What about Flat Earth? And go, get the hell out of here. It's like, what? What happened to the lizard people? Right. So lizard people, that's fine. But my thing is nuts. And we have gotten that resistance in a lot of the conspiracy world, especially with like the 9/11 people. The 9/11 people consider 9/11 the top of the heap when it comes to conspiracy because it was so big and so public. And it's like, there's nothing bigger than that. I go, really? Here's Flat Earth. And they're going, sorry, we're not going to acknowledge it because it makes 9/11 just seem tiny, literally tiny by comparison. So no, the bones, why the hell not? Is it one of my favorites? No, but I'm not going to shoot it down. And so let's put it this way: if all of a sudden I see a giant walking around somewhere, I will not be shocked in the slightest. I'll be like, oh yeah, I was wondering where those guys were. Now, will they have huge beards and look like Vikings? Who knows? Right. But no, why not? I mean, we find species all the time. One of my favorite species. In fact, here's a case for the giants. Would be a story I heard. You could look this up. I called it the Goliath cobra. I'm a big believer in cryptozoology species that when they are found, they're found by a really small group of people, and then they realize it's like, oh no, what if we don't survive to tell anybody that this thing exists? And so, like, there was this, I can't remember where it was exactly, but there was this story, and I believe it, of a cobra that was just massive, just huge, to where the head was basically the size of a horse head. And this helicopter was circling over it, and they just, an American helicopter, I think, was circling over this thing. And they couldn't believe what they were seeing. And this thing was close enough, they were saying it was amazingly fast. On top of it, it was like basically, it wasn't like a slow, like an anaconda thing. It was basically a cobra that was 30 freaking feet long. And it's like, okay, what happens if you're with a group of 5 people, you find this thing? Do you think it's that easy? Do you think it's like everything else? Oh, take some pictures. No, unless someone's quick on the trigger, you're all dead. So
on the topic of archaeology. And these bones underground. Under the flat Earth model, right? Yeah. What exactly is underneath the ground, and how long does it last?
Dun dun dun. Directly under the ground, or how deep can we dig? That sort of question.
Basically, how deep can we dig?
Oh well, that's just it. And I got this question at the conference last year, which was, how deep is flat Earth? And I'm going, I don't know, because even science doesn't know how deep its own Earth is. It's like, no, they know it's 4,000 miles to the center of the Earth. I go, oh, really? I go, what's the deepest hole ever dug? And you'd think it surprises most people. I say, is it half that? Is it 2,000 miles? Is it 1,000? Is it even 100? No, it's not even 10. It's 8 miles. That's it. That's the deepest hole ever drilled with a boring machine. We're not even talking, tunnels. We're talking, a boring machine that's what, maybe a foot wide, 2 feet tops. The Russians and the Germans tried for years to get past 8 miles, which is 12 kilometers, and they couldn't do it. Could not do it. And so if you can't drill past 8 miles, I'm not talking about the military, it's like, can the military dig deeper? Who knows? Maybe they can, but they're not telling anybody about it. If you can't dig past past 8 miles, then what exactly are all those diagrams you're showing us of Earth? And didn't you think it was kind of funny that all those diagrams were perfectly segmented, these 1,000 mile segments of red and orange and yellow and white? And like perfectly balanced, no weird strata formations. It was all these perfect layers. It's like, really? And so you have no idea what's down there. And you look in the fine print, and yeah, that's exactly what science says. It's like, yeah, we have no idea. We're just basing this off of what comes up from lava. That's it. It's like, so why don't you just use the diagram and put a big question mark in it? Because that science doesn't do that. They don't like doing that. They used to say, this is our best guess. But now they say, this is what it is, until it's proven otherwise, and then we'll claim that's what it is. Which, again, it's a statement that like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the world's most popular scientist, drives me nuts when he says it. He goes, science is right, whether or not you believe in it. And it's like, what? It's like, no. No, if I can test the boiling temperature of water at sea level, yeah, sure. But you can't tell me what the core of the Earth looks like, and preach it like that, because then all of a sudden, people going into grad school think, oh yeah, that's what the core of the Earth looks like. It's like, nobody knows what the core of the Earth looks like. So yeah, when they come back and say, how deep is the flat Earth? It's like, I don't know. I mean, we couldn't even if we wanted to, couldn't go past 8 miles. Does it have to be really, really thick? No. In fact, if you had subterranean civilizations down there, they could live in a place that's very small, narrow band, because most of our civilization lives between sea level and 1 mile up. So even if you had a cavern that was, I don't know, 5-10 miles high, tops, and I know you're saying, well, it's only 8 miles, you can't do 10 miles, but I'm just saying that, like, even commercial airliners only make it to 10 miles. So, I mean, who's to say we're not inside a much bigger cave at this point?
Yeah, it just seems very odd to me, right? Because, like, under flat Earth, the same logic applies where you drop something and it falls. Things, you don't realize that the flat Earth is real, and then everything changes and things start floating. So I would assume that, like, there probably is something very solid underneath the ground.
Oh yeah,
right?
There are very few things in the globe world, with the exception of astrophysics, that being aside, but the physical structure, that are that much more radical when it comes to flat Earth. Gravity, for example, which I love bringing up to people, because even science, it's one of those little things people don't know, that you go to a scientist and you say, tell me exactly what gravity is. Then they will come back at you and they will say, we can't tell you what gravity is. We can tell you what it does, but we can't tell you any more than that. We can only tell you the symptoms of gravity, why things, fall. Well, they say it's a magical molecular force that pulls things down to the center of a ball. And I say, well, it's a magical molecular force that just pulls things straight down. And the rest of it also would be density or buoyancy. And that is, it's not just gravity that's forcing things down. It's also a pressurized system. And people, again, there's so much we don't teach. And I know we're just trying to get people through the education system and try to, be a good civilization and empire. But we teach so very little about physics and engineering and chemistry. And most people don't even know. It's like, look, you're breathing in something. And it's a lot of something you don't even know, which is, it's 80%, you're breathing mostly nitrogen, which does nothing. And then less than 20% oxygen, and it's probably pressurized, because it's the only way that our atmosphere can even stay here. That's a whole nother thing, which is like physics. Gravity versus the vacuum of space. Or just say gravity versus a vacuum. Vacuum will always win. Always, always, always. There is no situation where gravity will win against a vacuum. And you're saying, what do you mean? It's like, okay, if you drink a soda with a straw out of a glass, what are you doing? Well, gravity is holding the soda in. You're using a vacuum force, your mouth. You're winning, and that's just your mouth. That's nothing. You can take a vacuum cleaner and pick up a bowling ball with it very, very easily, and you can take it even further. Again, you could take the second floor of your building, turn it into a vacuum chamber, pop the cork, and what's going to happen? It's not like the movies. I think it's just violent, it's instant, and it equalizes. Pressure cannot exist next to non-pressure without a container. It's a law of thermodynamics. It's a straight up law. And so the question is, why didn't gravity keep the air in your room instead of letting it go upstairs? Well, and you're saying, well, because the vacuum was stronger. I go, that's my point. My point is, when you walk outside, why are you still breathing? And your initial response, because we're trained this, is like, well, because of gravity. It's like, you mean the same gravity that right over there couldn't keep the air in your room, but you're keeping it here outside? How does that work? Because if you believe mainstream, the space is this massive, massive, perfect vacuum chamber. It's huge. If you believe it, it's the most impossible vacuum ever. How does that work? Tell me where. No scientist has ever come back. Where exactly does space end, or our atmosphere end and space begin? Where is that? And tell me exactly what happens in that line. Nobody never talks about it. It's one of those little things that we just kind of skate over because the average person doesn't know what it's supposed to mean. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, that's something that I've always wondered about flat Earth is if there has to be something underneath us to hold us there, right?
Yeah.
It would have to be there for a very long stretch of land. I wouldn't understand how that works, right? So what we understand, or what we believe about the globe Earth model, is that you have the universe and it could be infinitely expansive, and we have a concept of infinity.
Yeah.
And then what would that be in the flat Earth model? Does it
concept
go
of infinity? There is no infinity. Well, okay, if you a third, maybe less than a third of flat earthers don't believe in the dome, which means they don't believe in a pressurized system, which of course leads into the problem which I just mentioned, which was that you can't have pressure next to non-pressure. So some people talk about the infinite plane, but those people, the only reason they're doing that is because the idea of a domed structure becomes claustrophobic. Human beings generally don't like confinement. Even the concept of confinement, regardless of how comfortable it is. We like the option. It's like, well, if I had a spaceship, I could go off forever and go do things. And so when you tell people, it's like, no, you're in a dome. You basically, the universe is not this huge thing. It's a one-room studio apartment. Some people freak out by that. So there is no, in my model anyway, and the majority of the people that I hang out with, it's an enclosed system, and there is no infinite anything. We're living, and again, I could probably pop it up here real fast. I've got a little prop, which is, if that's it right there, then it could be sitting anywhere along with a whole bunch of other ones just like it. So it doesn't have to be infinite. Why would it be? I mean, the infinite thing, it helps with our imagination and it helps us create things, but it's not necessary. You don't need it. The only problem is that once you tell people, again, that you're in this, eventually they're just going to be consumed with it. All they're going to care about is the structure and the limit of it and what's outside it and why can't we get outside it and so on and so on.
Yeah. So what is outside the dome going upwards?
I'd like to think, it was an unlimited universe. So do I think this is a one-off? No, I don't. I think there's probably way more than just one of these in various stages of development all over the place. So your guess is as good as mine as what's up beyond it, because we can't see beyond it. Literally this thing could be sitting on your desk. So when you're asking, what's beyond it, is like, at that point, does it matter? Because you're outside of the known universe. You're outside of what you perceived. Could it be, just a petri dish on God's desk? Yeah, maybe. But that point, the short version is I try to only live one world at a time. But what I think is outside of this is an unlimited universe. That's what I think, because the confinement and all the restrictions inside, it feels like we're in some sort of school. I remember the world can only be one of three things: either entertainment, confinement, or some sort of educational system. Well, if it's entertainment, I'm not necessarily buying it, not at least from what our standpoint is, because there's a lot of people that just aren't having fun. I mean, this world is conflict all over the place. War is never fun. Well, maybe it is for a few people. The other one is confinement. If it is a prison, well, it's an awfully nice prison. And literally, if you took the people off of that, took them out of the world runs just fine without them, endlessly without them. Yeah, I mean, there's cycles of this and that, but it's not going to wipe itself out. It's perfectly balanced. And again, which is kind of like, it feels like school. It feels like we're here to learn something. And that's what I think it is. We're here to learn perspective.
And so do you think that the flat Earth conspiracy sort of links to any other conspiracy, such as like a world order sort of thing? Like, what is the driving force? Who is suppressing the movement of information here?
The people that have to lose the most, the people that built the civilization. So some governments, maybe, the people with bank accounts, that the numbers are meaningless because they're so huge. The problem with, and if you want to say lizard people, that's fine, but let's just stick to humans for now, or humanoids, which is eventually people die. So, there's people that have lived their entire lifetime and done legacy things with their kids, and their kids are trying to keep the secret. Who knows? I mean, there's so many secret societies out there, which I love. It's one of the things about the conspiracy world, which is really interesting, is that if you gave people a top 20 list and had just like, okay, here, who are the top 20 secret groups in order of importance, and you compared that with other people, you never get the same list twice. Because, I mean, where do you start? The Rothschilds, the Bilderbergs, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the Vatican, the Masons, a Jewish cabal. You just go on and on and on and on. And so, but the people at the highest level are just a conglomerate of those groups, the ones that have their thumb on civilization, the controlled economy. The world that they built, they don't want change. They had things in a particular way, and now it comes down to, can they change it to use it to their advantage, and without destroying it? Can you tell people that you're living in some sort of building and still get your agenda pushed forward? I don't know. Maybe. You might be able to do it. I mean, people, it's amazing how receptive they are to the media. A perfect example would be the mask shortage, which I love so much. Very, very recent, right? You can go around any store. You can't find any freaking masks. Well, it was interesting because at no point did any media group anywhere say, go buy masks. What they did was, whenever they ran a Corona story, they used a thumbnail underneath or some sort of image of somebody wearing a mask.
Right.
Because they had so much stock footage, because the Asians are just nuts over wearing masks. And they have been for years. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've seen it 10 years ago. And so there was so much stock footage.
Very sterile culture.
Yeah, whatever. So they put those out there, and then all of a sudden, what happened? When the panic buying started, what did people do? They went out and started buying masks for no apparent reason whatsoever. So, yeah. I think now you might be able to pull it off. You might be able to introduce the world as it is. And because the media, they're very, very tied to it. You can push out the same story to basically televisions that people are holding in their hands all over the world, almost simultaneously, and you could get the story, you could get the same narrative for 90-something% of the population.
Yeah, this is something that I absolutely love about the coronavirus, is that there are the people who will absolutely swear to you there's big pharma, they're trying to get your money, they're trying to make you sick so that they can get your money, and then they're paying $60 for a mask as soon as they hear about the coronavirus.
Right.
Like, a little hypocritical.
It's an interesting, and I don't want to necessarily delve into it too much, but you're talking about a conspiracy in the making right now. It is not acting. If you go into conspiracies long enough, you start to pick up things, and I like history, and I like disasters in history, and it is not acting like a natural virus in any way, shape, or form. It's just not. It's too slow. especially in the United States. I mean, we have a lot of international airports in the United States, and everybody knows. I mean, it's like when a bug hits an airplane. I mean, and I'm not necessarily saying that Hollywood got it completely right, because there's a lot of movies that are wrong, but there are some movies and books and television shows which were spot on, and they all say the same thing, which is when a virus hits an airplane, once it gets to an airport, a big hub, that's it. Everybody gets it in 2 weeks. Everybody is exposed to it in 2 weeks, because everybody gets off those planes and they go off to other planes. Look, a plane is basically an incubator for that stuff. The same air is circulating. You're sharing 2 bathrooms, and you're with these people for hours and hours and hours. And yet, the caseload in the United States has been very, very small. So there's something else going on here. The way they're rolling it out, there's multiple levels to it, and we're not going to even be able to dissect it for a while, because it's still in progress. But there's just a lot of it that does not make sense. It wouldn't act like this. It would have already have happened. And the things that are shutting down, they're shutting down in the wrong order. Meaning, so university, a couple universities closed down their campuses. And had people go to the dorms. Well, why would you go to the dorms? I mean, the dorms are even worse as far as people packed into an area. And then Harvard said, okay, we're pulling them out of the dorms. But the other universities aren't. And yet all the public schools, the high schools, the junior highs, the elementaries, they're all still open. And they're all still going to the cafeterias. And it's like, and that will change if a child, and again, why wouldn't, if you're saying the elderly are the most prone to this, but there's but no children are absolutely immune. I mean, there's plot holes. I'm a huge believer in good writing, big believer in good writing. And I will stay with a story or a movie as long as the writing is good. If there's enough plot holes, the reason why they call them plot holes is eventually the story boat just sinks, and that's it. It's like you're not invested anymore. And that's what this feels like right now. It's like there's stuff in here that just isn't making any sense, and we're not going to know the full ramifications until it finally blossoms, and it hasn't yet. So you'll know the panic buying you're seeing now, that's nothing compared to the panic buying that will follow.
Oh yeah, I definitely think, me personally, I think there might be something up with the coronavirus that is very unusual, and especially considering just the kind of virus it is and the kind of effect that it's been taking.
Yeah.
It's not really proportionate, in my opinion,
No.
the way that I'm looking at it.
No, it's not. And it's almost like, it's like, fine, there's hundreds of people dying in Italy, but the Italian Americans on the East Coast are unaffected. If it's a genetic thing, and China's saying, oh, it's not a problem over here. But there's some little things that bothered me. Of course, one of them is the fact that they're not showing the faces of the victims. Right? I mean, we're notorious. America, we love running those stories, the sympathy stories. It's like, oh, it's a father of 2, and leaves behind a loving wife, and he was a firefighter, and all this other crap. We love breaking down the backstories of people. Nobody that has died has gotten an expose at all. And people say, well, it's a privacy issue. It's like, why? There's no shame in this at all. It's not like AIDS or Ebola or something really weird. It's like, why are you not showing anybody who's died? And the states that are here's another one real fast, which is Washington, California, New York. Those are the big ones, right? Why exactly? There's the way it's spreading doesn't spread like you would normally expect. And people say, like, a perfect example would be Phoenix. Well, it has 1 case in the whole state of Arizona, right? And people say, well, it's because it's a warmer climate. Everybody knows that viruses can't survive on surfaces in warm climate. I was going, okay, first off, it's March, so it's not that hot in Phoenix right this second. Second, though, this is the bigger point, is that the airport is a massive international airport. Lots of planes go through Phoenix. So no international flights that have landed in Phoenix in the last 2 months. Nobody went out into Phoenix somewhere. You go into your car at room temperature. Everyone's keeping everything at room temperature. You go to your home. Nobody got infected anywhere ever. It just spread in Washington nursing homes and a couple places in California, and the National Guard's been called out in New York. The way the staging, the way it's happening, it's almost like managed panic. Like you're trying to manage a crisis, the actual crisis itself. I'll give you one more real quick, not to dwell on this too much. Which is when I was driving around doing the whole grocery thing. We were picking up a chemo bag, making a chemo kit for a friend of ours that has cancer, and I knew there weren't going to be masks. I had extra masks because I was a prepper anyway. But what was interesting is that there were no masks to be found in a 50-mile radius. Nowhere. I mean, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, anywhere that sold these freaking masks, they were gone. They were all gone, right?
Right.
At no time when I was shopping around for all the other things did I ever see a single person with a mask on. So I have a theory behind this. It's like this subliminal theory, which is that people are buying this stuff and they're waiting for the media to tell them when the crisis is greenlit. Meaning the apocalypse. I'm not kidding you. It's like they're waiting for the news to say, and the apocalypse starts in 3, 2, 1, go. Right? And people's like, immediately, like everyone puts on their mask at the same time. That's the sort of mentality we're talking about here. Even the stupid thing like the toilet paper. Again, nobody said anything about buying toilet paper ever. No one said anything. In fact, it's not a diuretic disease. It's not an intestinal thing, right? It's a lung thing. So and so people are trying to speculate on it. No, I know exactly why. I got to see. I was in Costco. I watched it happen. It's because in a crisis, people still go down to the basics, and one of the basics is you will always use toilet paper. It will never hurt to buy too much toilet paper. And then the panic thing starts in. Well, it's like, well, why should I buy 4 rolls when I can buy 100? So,
right.
Okay. And then you see, and of course, you see the next guy, buying. It's like he's bought 200. And next thing you know, you're ordering your kids like, Billy, get an extra shopping cart. It's like, I don't want to get an extra shopping cart. We're filling it full of toilet paper.
You're embarrassing me, Mom.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. And in fact, there was a person yesterday. I had family in Costco yesterday, as a matter of fact, just yesterday, and they were limiting it to 1 brick. The Costco bricks of toilet paper. 1 brick per person, right? This shows you the mentality. So a guy buys it, puts it in his car, comes back, goes to a different register, but remember, everything's tracked. They saw that he had bought one just an hour earlier, not even an hour earlier, and they sent him packing. And they said, sorry, you already bought a brick today. You have to come back tomorrow.
Oh,
but the fact that again, that's the mentality. You should be think about your neighbor. No. No. I wrote a survival guide that delves into that whole thing, and that was after Katrina. People protect their own interests. People, sorry, not to ramble too much, but there's a line from Heath Ledger, the Batman movie when he was the Joker. And it's still stuck with me to this day, which is he goes, you wait, because he was saying that Batman, why are you saving these people? They're the most selfish things ever. He goes, when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And he wasn't kidding. And so that whole thing with the ferry, it's like, oh, I'm not going to blow them up. No, hell, both those boats would have blown up. that movie would have ended 20 minutes earlier.
So, we've talked a little bit about the coronavirus. Are there any other kind of conspiracies besides flat Earth that you think have some merit to them?
Oh, tons. I mean, tons. I could usually I'll break them down really quick for you. I'll give you my favorites, and these will upset some people, but your friend will probably get really excited about it.
Yeah.
Which is,
I'll have him watch this back later, and if he can get back from work in the time,
if this is not a big deal. What's his name?
His name is Coral Farmer. It goes by Galaxy.
Coral.
These are Discord.
Coral
Farmer. Yeah, because he has a fish sort of tank with coral.
Coral Farmer, you're missing out. We're talking about good stuff. So.
Oh yeah.
So here's the deal. So we'll just rattle off a few really quick. 9/11. Okay, was it an inside job? Easy enough. I can do that one in a couple sentences, which is, you don't think it was an inside job? Tell me what happened to Building 7. Most of Americans don't even know that Building 7 fell. A 50-story building that was not hit by a plane, that was barely even glanced by debris. A fire starts in the basement for no apparent reason, and the building just implodes 5 hours later, just drops. for no apparent reason whatsoever. But because the island was evacuated by that point, hardly anyone saw it. But they did film it. Now, here's the part that throws people. It's like, oh, maybe it was a fire. I mean, it's like, really? Because fire, if that was the case, then there would be no demolition teams. All you have to do is set a fire in a building, and eventually it'll just implode at perfect free fall speed and implode on itself. But the big thing was there was a British news team, and you can look it up. It's a matter of public record, and it's out there on YouTube. The British news team reported it falling 20 minutes before it fell. And the reason they did that was because, and I knew because I was in the time and attendance industry when it happened. I knew because people screw up time zones. They do it all the time. In fact, in America, most people in Americans don't even know there's 4 time zones in America, not 3. But people forget it. They like mountain time zone is like ignored because nobody lives in mountain time zone by comparison. And what had happened was they were told to report on this, which was interesting because remember, they're newsreaders and they were told to report it and they screw up the time zone. So instead of reporting it 40 minutes after it fell, they reported it 20 minutes before it fell. That's 9/11. Sandy Hook, let's do that one really really quickly, I should say, which is I will pay $1,000 PayPal to the first person that sends me a 10-second video clip. I'm going to say it's 3 times. Video of any kid being carried out of that building. It's never happened. And you say, well, who cares? Well, it does matter a lot because that's how the whole operation got completely botched, which was, you remember, it was first thing in the morning, right? The shooting happened like right first thing in the morning. And what happened was the traffic helicopters, which were full of gas, they had nothing better to do than fly over, and they just hovered above the school and shot HD footage. Just shot it. Nobody came out of the school. Nobody came out of the school. 600 kids. You know how long it takes to evacuate a grade school? Long time. Right. You have to clear room by room. I mean, these are kids. This isn't high school. You want to look at the nightmare, look at Columbine. I don't care what the conspiracy in Columbine was. Just look at the chaos that was going. There were kids jumping out of windows and breaking arms and legs. It was awful. It was a mess. 600 kids trying to get them out of grade school. Not a single kid came out of there. Not one. Tell me how that happened. $1,000. I'll PayPal it to you. Show me. All you will find, if you look this up, is 3 still shots of some kids being with hands on each other's backs, walking out of a parking lot, in the middle of a parking lot with the school. You can't even see the school in the background. And when was this shot taken? And moreover, who was the reporter that shot it and how'd they get in there? And where were the guys with guns? The cops would have been there with kids under each arm. Yeah, no. That's Sandy Hook. Other ones, JFK, that's too easy. I mean, if you can watch Oliver Stone's JFK without thinking and still think, oh yeah, I was absolutely, a lone gunman, come on. In fact, JFK was such a great example because it was a lone gunman who was then, get this, killed by a lone gunman. It was brilliant. Love it. Pearl Harbor, probably too big for most people, and that is Pearl Harbor had to be attacked. It's not that it should have, that it was inevitable. It was that if it isn't attacked, Pearl Harbor, then everyone's speaking German now. Germans had won World War II. It was done. It was absolutely over. They were just mopping up. But people don't talk about that. No one would have found out about the Holocaust. This thing, it was a done deal. Russia was burning to the ground. England was not sleeping because they knew one day they were going to come in. And then all of a sudden the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor and the Americans get into the war, and the rest is, as they say, is history. Pearl Harbor had to be attacked. We had to bait the Japanese to get them in. What are you willing to do to save the world? Are you willing to make sacrifices? And that applies with every American war that we've ever fought. Notably, like the Mexican-American War, which most people don't understand, which was a big land grab, which was you sacrifice the Alamo, 200 people. What do you get in exchange for that? Oh, well, let's see. Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, because there used to be an old Mexico, and that worthless piece of real estate called California. Trillions of dollars in real estate, in adjusted dollars, for 200 men. Can't put a price on human life? Of course you can. We do it all the time. The same thing happened with the Spanish-American War. We sacrificed the Maine, a couple hundred people. What do you get for that? Oh, let's see. Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, and probably could have gotten Cuba if we spent a little more effort on it. And we didn't. And too bad. The Vietnam War was for ulterior motives. The Gulf War was for ulterior motives. Every war we've ever fought. I mean, heck, even the American Civil War. People think, oh, it was about slavery. No, it wasn't. It was about money. That's all it was. It was the last chance. It was the best chance that England had to take America. Remember, they'd already tried twice. They tried it in the Revolutionary War against the French, lost to the French, not us. The War of 1812 barely held on. In fact, it was just a reconnaissance force that initially took us, and then the British said, okay, well, all we have to do is take out the French, so that way the French aren't backing up America, and maybe we'll still have enough strength to take them out. Beat France, Waterloo, Napoleon, that whole thing, come back to America, lost the Battle of New Orleans, and so their last chance with the Civil War. It wasn't the South versus the North. It was supposed to be the South and the British Navy versus the North. And then the United States, the myth goes, and I believe it, that the United States asked the Russian Navy to get involved. Paid them off and said, look, we need help. Because the North was not going to win against the South and the British. It just wasn't going to happen. Any other conspiracies other than that? I mean, obviously the moon landing, but that's tied mostly to flat Earth. Those are my favorites.
Right.
Everything else, they're smaller. There's others, stuff that's out there, but those are great ones to throw at people. I'll give you one more real quick though, which is oh great, we are first cases on the island reported just now. That's about 50 miles north of me. Lovely. Okay, so here's one that most people haven't even heard of. It was in my book, and I claim exclusive rights to it, which is the Panama Canal. You're probably saying, Panama Canal? That's not a conspiracy. In fact, this will impress your friend. You ready? This is for Coral, which is the Panama Canal. It was just a big engineering thing, right? That's all it was. It's just a big ditch connecting two oceans. Basically a lake, saltwater lake, but it was basically connecting two oceans. And it took a lot of men to build it. Compared to like the Hoover Dam, which was very, very big. Hoover Dam lost 70 men in the construction of it. Happens, right? People build things. Construction accidents happen all the time. Lost 70 men. Do you have any men were lost in the building of the Panama Canal?
I'd say a lot.
The better part of 6,000. Now, and you're saying, wow, that's a lot. Why haven't I heard of this? And I say, well, they died of malaria and yellow fever. And you're going, well, that's what happens. You go down there, it's a jungle. Mosquitoes, yellow fever, you're going to die. I'm going, yeah. But what if I told you they knew full well they were going to kill them? And they sent them anyway. And you say, no, that's not what we do. I go, yeah, it is. Because the Americans didn't come up with the Panama Canal idea. It was initially the French. French, pretty smart. They came out and tried to do it in the late 1800s, just before we got there. And they didn't know anything about mosquito netting or bug spray or any of that stuff. And they lost men in freaking droves to the tune of 21,000 men. I mean, there's been wars fought which haven't lost that many men. Just lost, just died. And so many that they just quit. They said, screw it, it's not worth it. They go home and we come in. So where's the conspiracy, you say? The conspiracy is this. If I'm an engineer or whatever I'm doing and I want to sign up for this and I go to the recruiter, remember these are civilians, and they say, oh yeah, I go down there. What about safety concerns? You going to tell those guys that they have a 1 in 8 chance of just dying? No, you are not going to tell them this. You're going to do it for the greater good and say, oh no, it's fine. Just go. You're good. It's sunny. It's warm. You'll love it. And that's what they did. And so did the ends justify the means? Yeah, it did. I mean, 6,000 is a lot of guys. They were willing to lose 10,000. I have no doubt. It became a huge military strategic choke point, the most expensive toll road in the world, and made a lot of money for the Americans. Did the ends justify the means? Yeah, it did. So, again, there's your classic example of why conspiracies happen. Conspiracy, the classic definition is when 3 or more people conspire to do something that may be illegal or unethical. Now, does the greater good cancel that out? Yeah, a lot of times it does. It does, right. Because they don't want to debate it with people. There's decisions that governments make for the public because they don't want to get into that debate. It's like, we're not going to, because a lot of the times the debate would never end. People don't want that on their conscience. They just don't want to do it. So governments make calls. It's like, yeah, we're going to do something horrible, but most of the people are going to benefit from it. But in order to do it, we're going to sacrifice something. It's the old argument, would you sacrifice a child to cure cancer? A lot of people would. But then you say, would you sacrifice your own child to cure cancer? It's the impossible choice. You can't make it. You cannot make it. You'd freeze in your tracks. Most mothers would just stand there and be like, no. Or they'd make the decision, no, my kid, it's like, you're going to kill 1 million people if you try to save that child. Don't care. We see it in movies from time to time. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. Speaking on topic of conspiracies, not just conspiracy theories, were you aware of any conspiracies that at the time there might have been theories going on and then later they came out like, yeah, it actually happened?
Conspiracies that were conspiracies that were proved wrong, or
no, conspiracy theories that were later proven right.
No, because most of them are, conspiracies don't happen that often. Maybe little ones. I mean, obviously the newer ones that are tough to get into, you don't figure out, hindsight type deals, like Enron, for example. People were calling that a conspiracy right off the bat. And because everything looked really, really suspicious, all the financials around Enron, and it turned out to be even worse than people had thought. Harvey Weinstein was a conspiracy that just kept blossoming into something way bigger and more sinister. Anything really, really big? I mean, again, I think Corona right now might be turning into it. I don't know yet, though. Trying to think of anything else. No, I never had any. When I go into conspiracies, I go into it guilty first, because, and that was a change from my earlier life. When I was young, before I watched JFK the movie in the theater back in the 90s, early 90s, I didn't think that people lied on a big level. I didn't think that conspiracies existed. Literally, like a lot of people, you rose-colored glasses. It's like everything's great. There's nothing really, really bad. But then slowly but surely, as you get older, you start hearing the stuff. And new media has gotten a lot more brutal nowadays, which is, for example, we don't want to believe conspiracies if they hurt something that's positive to us. And I'll give you a couple examples. Because we all know that, look, there's conspiracies in politics, business, sports, entertainment, journalism, even science. We all know this. A quick recent one would be Kobe Bryant. There's one for you. It's not even a conspiracy. It happened, but people voluntarily forgot about it. So when anyone said, yeah, was Kobe Bryant one of the top 5 players of all time? Yes, he was. Did he bring a lot of people joy? Yes, he did. Did he retire with 2 numbers? Yeah, he did.
Right.
Why is that? And if you're in Los Angeles, you don't talk about it. I lived in Colorado when that happened. And it was, they buried it as best they could. But people forget, kind of like Tiger Woods. You don't want to believe it about your heroes. The old saying is like, never meet your heroes. And so it's like people forget. It's like, look, he had 2 numbers because his marketing people weren't convinced they could dig him out of the endorsement hole that he was in. They weren't convinced. It was like, man, you should just get a new number. It was that bad. and so it's like, hey, and it worked. It's like, hey, 24, new player, really? and so, but it was awkward because when he retired, you had to retire 2 numbers. And I'm sure people in the audience that had never even heard of Caitlin Faber. It's like going, why is there 2 numbers again? It's like, no, because it never happened. You don't have 2 numbers on the same team. You have 2 numbers for different teams, because people that are traded, but never for the same team. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's the first time it's ever happened. Like little things, like whenever it happens to a media person, like Matt Lauer, perfect example. Morning talk show host, years doing it. And when the stories finally came out, that was it. You didn't want to believe it, and then all of a sudden it was believable. Okay, I'll give you one more real quick. Perfect example would be Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong, right? World famous cyclist, won tournament, Tour de France, just crushed it, right? Crushed it. Was he doping? Right? Was he using performance enhancing drugs? I don't care about the cancer thing. You know, who cares about that, right? Yes, he survived testicular cancer. Great, good for you. Did he use that to kind of blur the lines to where the performance enhancing drugs that he was using was making him win? Yes, it was. But every year, every press conference for every year for 7 years, he just lied straight to the camera's face. You know, because they asked him all the time. It's like, are you doping? You know, are you using, you know, performance drugs? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I am not. And after 7 years, finally, one of his dope dealers, the guy that was coming up with this shit for him, they came to him and basically ratted him out. They had him. And then all of a sudden he comes on camera and he goes, yeah, I've been doing the whole time. I've been lying to you the whole time. That just, I mean, he almost single-handedly destroyed the cycling, everything about cycling. Just right there. I mean, they stripped him of everything, and it was awful. The rules, sorry, let me end this part with this. The rules of the world now are this. The lawyer's mantra still applies. The fact that it's the lawyer's code now, the lawyer's rules, which is you deny until they absolutely have you. And then maybe, and only if you have no other option, do you admit it.
Plea deal.
Yeah, maybe you plea deal. Maybe. And if there's no plea deal, well, then you're screwed. But that's it. I mean, every lawyer, the lawyer will tell you, it doesn't matter if you're guilty. Don't admit it. Which is why, by the way, if you ever think you're going to get arrested, you shut up. I don't care what you watch on television. It's like, oh, if you lawyer up, you're guilty. It doesn't matter. You shut up. Right. You don't talk about anything.
I was watching this really good seminar about it was done by a lawyer, and he was saying, right, look, it doesn't matter whether you're guilty, you're innocent. When the cops come and knock on your door, you call your lawyer.
Yep.
Because anything that you say, it can be used against you, but it will never be used for you.
Yes, in fact, I know which one you're talking about, and he's absolutely right. And that's the key. In fact, they tell you this up front. Anything you can say, we've all heard it, so anything you can say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Which they're basically telling you, whatever you say right now, we're gonna record every second of it, and we will use it in court against you. You will again, they don't. I know, you know, what you're talking about, where he says, it'll never benefit you ever. Oh, the cop may be a nice guy and he may want you. You know, he may want you, but it's not up to him. It's up to the prosecutor.
In court, that's just hearsay.
Yeah, in the court, it's like, who cares? Yeah, so never ever, you know, again, people blow it because so many people just want to confess. I don't know why. They just want, it's like they're begging to. And maybe it's the ones that feel guilty. Who knows? But
I mean, there's people who confess who later you find out they were actually innocent, and the cops had them really good on the interview.
Yeah.
That's what the prosecutor is trying to do. The prosecutor is just trying to find somebody who fits the bill, might be guilty, and, you know, if you slip up, say something a bit suspicious, that might be enough.
Absolutely right. And one more thing I should throw in there is the television, because there's so many cop shows. I mean, there's so many cop shows out there, and in almost all of them, watch. If you go through them, I challenge anybody. Very few times will you ever see them go through. Remember, it's a fictional account, right? Where the person will say lawyer, and then they don't say anything, because that's bad television. They will always have the guy eventually crack and give up all sorts of stuff, either by threat or, you know, we had your guy, or he's tricked, or whatever it is. They will always confess, because it's better television to do that, even though it absolutely goes against what you're supposed to do. But since you see that so many times, I think in a lot of people, it's like, well, you know, in Law and Order, they confess all the time. That's because if they don't, the show is 20 minutes shorter. Because people, you know, that's the last thing you want to do is television, have somebody sit there. You know, it's like, well, you want to talk about it? You know, you're not supposed to say anything. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to sit there and not say anything. That's what you're supposed to do, and they even tell you that, again, with the whole rights, the Miranda rights. They tell you basically that's what you're supposed to do without saying it. Mm-hmm. You know, in fact, if the cops wanted to wreck their lives, they should modify Miranda's to say, if I were you, I'd shut up.
Right.
So
yeah, they have such a nice way of putting it. They're like, you have the right to remain silent.
Yeah.
Silent.
Yeah.
But really, they're just like, yo, we really trying to get you in jail out here. Like, don't talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And it's amazing how many people don't listen to it. It's like they just gloss over it. Anyway, what else you
yeah.
got?
Yeah. So I myself used to not be very open-minded with conspiracy theories or conspiracies in general. Um, to an extent, I'm still not. Like, I'm not going around researching every conspiracy, maybe adopting it. But one thing that did open my eyes was the Iran-Contra. When all of that stuff came out,
Oh yeah.
and they were talking about, yep, this is what we did, this is what was going on in Nicaragua, this is how we were operating the whole thing, and I'm sitting there like, conspiracies are really happening out here.
Yeah. Did you ever watch any of the Netflix series Narcos?
No, never.
It's a look into the drug trade, but they kind of dabble into the gun running part of it. And the short version is this: it's like, look, here's another little conspiracy for you, which is because I laugh nowadays because we've always heard that the term for years and years, the war on drugs. There is no war on drugs. There never will be, and the reason is
Yeah,
this:
no,
is because Americans always will buy drugs.
right.
That's it. You get 20% of the population is drug receptive, for lack of a better term. They will buy drugs. 20% of the population, some way or another. And if you can't stop the people from buying drugs, then why are you fighting the groups from South America and Mexico? Why are you fighting them? You can't. There's no point to fight them. So the first thing they did was, once they realized that people were buying a lot of cocaine, right? The government swooped in and they said, well, hell, we'll in fact, they even said as much in the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, where the government came to Johnny Depp's character and said, look, we will absolutely let you make money, but we want 70%. And Johnny Depp's character is like, keep 30% of my own money, screw you. And they busted him for it. When there's that much money going in, if the money's coming out of America, our government is going to step in. I don't care what it is, and we're going to say, sorry, we're going to kick most of that money back into America. We're not giving you all our money. We took over the drug trade, plain and simple. And then we made it even easier. It's like, okay, fine, we can't stop people from buying these type of drugs, so we'll take over the drug trade, and then we'll refine it even more. We'll make some drugs legal in some states. We'll let that on a state-by-state basis, and then we'll make prescription drugs, which will get you almost as high as the illegal stuff. So you corner that sort of thing. It's a massive conspiracy. But what would you do? What would you do if you saw millions and millions of dollars a day being funneled out of your country to a third world power, to criminals in a third world power? What would you do? It's like, sorry, you can't let that go. You either burn them into the ground, or you all of a sudden, in which case you're just, you're doing whack-a-mole because more of them are just going to keep popping up.
Exactly.
Or you say,
Right.
yeah, you know what? Let's just buy them out. Let's take over the
Right.
routes. And,
Exactly.
and then you also, while you're doing it, it's like, well, since we're transporting stuff over this region anyway, let's arm some guerrilla rebels. I'm sorry, freedom fighters. Let's arm some of those guys. Let's do some colonialism. Our government, despite what people think, yeah, it seems slow and lethargic, but behind the scenes, there's some very intelligent, very ruthless people that get stuff done. And
Yeah.
so when I'm watching Narcos and I'm watching other movies that tie into it, it's like, yeah, these are good moves. It's like, is it sinister to have our government run the drug trade? What would you do? It's like, look, we're not going to give away, we're not going to let that much money go somewhere else. The United States is very greedy along those lines.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, and that's something that there was a guy named Ricky Ross.
Yeah.
And he was directly tied in with the Iran-Contra. He was buying drugs directly from Blandon,
Sure.
selling them here in the U.S.
Yep.
The FBI was watching him the whole time, or the CIA was watching him the whole time.
Yeah.
And so he said, oftentimes with the drug issue, people try to make it a political issue because it's such a catchphrase, the war on drugs. Let's stop it, let's continue,
Right.
let's pursue whatever. But it's not a political issue. It's a medical issue because people medically need drugs.
Right.
And as long as there are drug addicts and people who need drugs, like you said, it's whack-a-mole. You can take one down, someone's always going to
the
pop up.
the supply and demand, again, it's basic economics, has been there forever. Which is why, watch Narcos. Fascinating story. I mean, you got to understand, when the demand is that high, when you're looking at America, right? And a lot of countries look at America as like a bunch of rich, insane people. If Americans are willing to spend that much money, if there's that much money coming out of America, you got to understand that, like, just in the last 10 years, I came up with this recently, which is like, do you understand that hundreds of thousands of Mexicans die just for the privilege of selling us drugs? They're fighting each other. They're blowing each other away in the streets just for the opportunity to sell Americans the drugs. That's how much money there is that we're involved here. And so, we, if you're looking over the top and you have the power to take control of that, and it may take a few years to pull that off, sure. You go to these guys, you sit down with them and say, oh, look, we'll move your product, but you're going to get this much. If you fight, again, this is what I would do. This is me, right? Because I can put myself in their shoes. Let's say you go to the Cali cartel or the Medellin cartel, right, down in South America, back in the day, and you say, fine, we will move your product for you. This is our rates. We will guarantee you this. We will, we're going to raid these shipments here and there just to make sure it looks like we're actually fighting you from time to time. And those are the terms. If you fight us, because remember, it doesn't matter how good the cartels are, they're still civilian. Military has access to things which are vicious. If you guys have any doubt, watch the wonderful movie Clear and Present Danger, one of the Tom Clancy movies from back in the day, where it's like, fine, you fight us and we'll just have a fighter plane go fly over one of your villages and literally incinerate it. You cannot battle us. So we honestly, I mean, come on, our government is the biggest gangster group of all time. And that's really what it boils down to. It's like, you can say, oh, they're the criminals. It's like, yeah, but everybody, it's the food chain, and in the end, you follow the money, and there we are.
Yeah, so I'm aware that you made a Netflix documentary, or Netflix made a documentary with you.
Yeah.
Is this like a Netflix original?
Yeah.
Do you plan on doing anything else with them in the future, or any other kind of documentary?
I'll do any documentary that happens. Will the documentary people that made Behind the Curve, will they make another one with us? No, they won't. Because they hated us. And they didn't hate us personally, they hated the topic. Hated it. Oh, right. God, they hated it so much. Because mostly because there was a 12-year-old kid that walked up to me when I was on stage and was asking me questions from the microphone, and he was very, very curious about that. And his parents, it was a school day, and his parents brought him there, and they were really worried about that. And but it was fine. I mean, the documentary did very, very well. It was picked up by everybody, and it did a whole bunch of film festivals. And I had fun making it, but at the same time, they took some shots at us that I didn't appreciate. But that was okay, because it generated a huge amount of curiosity. And because it was somewhat friendly, honestly, the reason why it worked out the way it did is because the producers and the directors or the director and the editors and all that, they were not with us in any capacity. And so they, mainstream embraced them. It's like, all right, you can show your stuff, because you're from the outside looking in. You're not inside the Flat Earth community. Exactly. And so it did very, very well for Netflix, and even got a resurgence recently. Broke back into the top 10 after Mad Mike, did his unfortunate crash. So the only thing I would have changed would have been at the end, Jaren's experiment, because Jaren botched it, but at the same time the director took some liberties with editing. And again, I understand. They had to boil down 7 months worth of work down to 100 minutes, but they were biased. They said they weren't going to, and then they ended up taking a stand. And the only reason I knew they took a stand is because they admitted as much during the director's commentary on iTunes. They did director's commentary just for the iTunes version, and I just listened to it, and it's like, and they just came out of nowhere and said, "Oh yeah, this is when we took a stand against these guys." Because they thought we were going to damage science in the future. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's something when you're in the flat Earth community, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who would really like to explore that, but then at the same time, they're never really going to be fully there. They're still going to be thinking, flat Earth, this is a meme. I'm going to meme about it and not really take it seriously.
It doesn't matter because if you're thinking about it, it's always in the back of your head. Yeah, there's some people that just make memes and just do it kind of like a surface thing and they don't look at it. But what I found out when I was doing a conference with a radio guy down in New Zealand, he asked me about, I think it was called the Eighth Man Effect. And I should look it up just to make sure. I haven't bothered doing that. I'll try to do it after this. Which is the Eighth Man Effect is really, really interesting. He goes, if somebody hears about a topic unsolicited from 7 different people that are unrelated to each other, right, at random times, it'll start sticking in their head. And when they hit the eighth man, it becomes like a subliminal peer pressure thing. Kind of like when you hear about a movie and you're like, oh, I don't have any interest in the movie. Oh, I don't have any interest in the movie. You hear about that movie enough from enough people, and it's happened to me, where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to freaking watch it. Just because I've heard it so many times. And you can do that with just about any topic. And Flat Earth kind of became that. In fact, it became that with this guy where he goes, I kept hearing about it. And people weren't approaching me with it necessarily, they just mentioned it in passing. I just kept hearing it in different places. And that's when it catches up. So when people make memes about it, great. When people troll it, great. In fact, I wish I had 1,000 trolls dedicated to my videos, to go after me. And they don't understand. I tell them up front, kind of like the, right to remain silent thing. I tell them, I go, you realize that when you make a video about Flat Earth and or me, you're basically just shooting wooden arrows into a bonfire. From the outside, oh yeah, it looks like something's happening. A lot of arrows flying. But all you're doing is adding wood to the fire. You're just making it bigger because of how the internet works and how the metrics work. And that is so true with us. So yeah, please, anyone that wants to make memes against us, go right ahead. I mean, every time you do it, every time you make fun of it, you make a video. I mean, I've seen all the major channels on YouTube have done a Flat Earth video now at one point or another. Huge channel. I mean, everyone from PewDiePie on down to just nobody. They made Flat Earth videos. Why? It's because it's in their head somewhere. They figure, and it's like they may make fun of it, and I don't care. In fact, it's the host. No offense to you, but it's not the host I'm interested in. It's the people out there listening, because the host will rarely, if ever, change their mind on the fly. It's the people out there that are listening anonymously. They're the ones that don't have any peer pressure on them. They're the ones that are going to start, typing in stuff and looking into it.
Yeah, that's I don't take any offense to that at all. What I'm trying to do with this sort of podcast, this is the very first episode, and really, I'll take anybody. Opinions might be very controversial. You might be a super conspiracy theorist, might have a very esoteric opinion, whatever it may be, as long as it doesn't break Twitch TOS. I kind of just want to host it as long as you're interesting.
Oh yeah,
right?
Sure. And a lot of people have said that. In fact, I've had a lot of hosts in the early days like 3 years ago, that were nervous. They would tell me beforehand, they would go, man, I really don't know if I want to do this topic, because they were afraid of the backlash. Alex Jones from InfoWars contacted me, one of the early ones in like 2016, and of course we've done one since then. I didn't do it. David Weiss did it from DITRH, but his producers came to me and asked if they could do a Flat Earth theme without actually using the words Flat Earth, and I go, I said, what? I go, and they go, well, how long can we do that? And I go, it's not very long, maybe 10 minutes. I go, you're going to have to say it. They said, no, we can't take the chance. Forward to 2019, and we had one of the producers, had him. One of the producers was ours, which I loved using that James Bond line, and it's so true for us, which is the first thing you need to know about us is that we have people everywhere. And we do. You have no idea how many people. They're just all over the place. I have run into so many people that are into this topic, but they're all anonymous. It's one of those quiet Fight Club things. It's awesome. I had a plane flight on going down to Auckland, and I was literally just sitting there minding my own business, right, sitting in the plane, and this guy, young. I don't know if he was Hispanic or whatever, but a young man who was passing out bread, one of the flight attendants. And he comes up to me. He goes, "You want any bread?" And I go, "No, I'm okay." And he goes, "Are you sure you don't want any bread?" I was like going, "Oh, great. It's a Mission Impossible thing." So I said, "Yeah, I'll take one of those garlic rounds right there." And he goes, "Yeah, you want those because they're flat and they're round." It's like, what? He absolutely knew me. He had seen the documentary, knew exactly who I was, and he's like looking around, going, "I have to pass out more bread." And he goes around. It was awesome. It was like, and yeah, that sort of thing happens to me quite often now. It just blows my mind,
awesome.
and a lot of it was because of the documentary.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. Uh, when you said you didn't use Discord, right? Literally until I contacted you,
Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine who was going to come on the podcast as a first member, and he had some really bizarre ideas, and I'm thinking this is going to be a really fun podcast. He mentions you to me, and he says it would be really cool if you tried to get in contact with Mark Sargent and see if you can get him on. And I was like, shot in the dark, literally brand new Twitch channel, almost no viewers. Who knows what he's gonna say?
Yeah.
I message you and I get you on. This man, this man. Where was I going with this? Oh man, I had it right on the tip of my tongue.
What about me or God?
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. He uses Discord, right?
Yeah.
And so he was telling me about you, and he's a really interesting guy, but he's kind of a bit of a boomer, right? He has some really boomer takes sometimes.
Me?
And so he mentions you. No, not you.
Oh,
No.
a different guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy I was gonna have on before you.
Yeah.
So he tells me to message you, and I message you and I ask you to hop on Discord,
Yeah.
and you say you don't use
I use
Discord, and I'm
Discord.
like, yeah, and I was thinking, oh wait a minute, I got his contact from someone who's pretty boomerish. I'm thinking Mark Sargent might be a bit of a boomer, and then I get on talk with you, and nah, you're pretty interesting guy.
Thanks.
You're up with the memes, you know.
Well, if you're online a lot, you pick up some things, but there's some things I won't do. Like for example, I'm not a boomer. Oh, I'm Gen X, obviously, but I've never sent a text in my life. Not because I don't know how to send a text, but because I think a lot has been lost in translation because of texting. So
Right.
I just refuse to. It's like, look, I'm old school. I grew up, with tech support phone. I mean, I literally spent years on the phone. And that's because you can get so much more done. But I know it's socially easier to text. I get it. And that is,
Right.
again, it starts with dating in high school, which is like, oh, I can ask somebody out on a date and I don't have to freaking crap my pants while I'm asking her out. And once you do that, that reinforcement, then all of a sudden it's like, hey, the relationship starts with a text and it probably ends with a text. But there are other things. I mean, yeah, I don't use Discord. I don't have Instagram, in fact, or Facebook or Twitch or Snapchat or any of the others. Mostly because I just don't have time. I mean, my YouTube thing, I'm throwing a lot of the stuff on there, and I just don't want to be stretched too thin. So I have other people. It's like, look, if it's gonna get out, it's gonna get out regardless of where I put it. People can just share my stuff. So if they do, great. I mean, look what happened with Netflix. I didn't even have to do anything with that, and
Yeah.
Netflix has nothing to do with any of those other previous things.
Yeah.
So
Um, what do you think? What do you think about the Netflix thing, right? Like you mentioned, you didn't have to do much to kind of get that attention from Netflix.
yeah,
Do you think sometimes it backfires a bit? Like you're this guy with this idea, and you want to get it out there, and then all of a sudden, all of the lights get on you. You're on the news. Netflix is at the door trying to get a deal with you. How is that?
that was a little different, and it didn't happen the way that most people think. A lot of people don't understand that when it comes to film, especially independent films or documentaries, you make them, and then if you don't have a buyer right away, which they didn't, you have to go to film festivals. And then during those film festivals, word of mouth shows up. You make it into the top 10 of this and that. And there's so many films that don't get into film festivals. Like our first one was Toronto, and there were 3,000 submissions, and they only could use 100 films. And we made it into the 100, and then we made it into the top 10. We didn't win any awards, but we were always in this group of things to watch. But Flat Earth is so weird, it's not going to win an award. So Netflix didn't buy it right away. It was picked up by iTunes first, I believe, and then YouTube Red, maybe, I think, picked it up. Some of the other smaller ones picked it up. Oh, Amazon picked it up. And then finally Netflix picked it up at the end of 2018. They picked it up going into the beginning of 2019. And it was, but again, you don't know. You don't know what resonates with people. I mean, the producers had no faith whatsoever. They didn't even know it was going to get picked up at all. They didn't even think they were going to get into film festivals. You don't know what's going to resonate with the public. So again, would I have changed some things? Maybe a few, but since I had the privilege of actually going to some of these film festivals and sitting in theaters and watching it with people, you know, with a hat and glasses, I got to see what happened. And I saw the reaction and the blend of how things work and what resonates. And so, no, it exposed people a lot to the topic, and it was safe. It made people safe. Even the title, Behind the Curve, because they're dumb people, right? Or behind the curve. It made people feel safe to even watch it. So, and that was it. They go in, it's like, well, we're going to make fun of stupid people. And then, and all of a sudden, in fact, the first 20 minutes, I'm not kidding you, the first 20, 25 minutes of the movie, people didn't even think it was real. They thought it was a piece of docufiction where it was like, oh, it was like a parody of something. It's like, well, these people are like, they're not real people. And then all of a sudden, like 25 minutes, they're going, wait a minute. There's something really big and scary on the internet, and I've never heard of it. And it's flat earthers. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, in fact, there was a story, people have heard this a million times, but there was an editor in Hollywood who we showed it to, and he knew nothing about anything. And the editor said, okay, just watch this. You know, no context. And afterwards, he was blown away, and he says, wow. He goes, what sort of budget did you have for this movie? Right? It's like, what do you mean? He goes, all those actors, they played it so straight, so real. You know, he literally did not believe that anyone in the movie was real. He thought that everyone was an actor. And then they had to break it to him. It's like, no, man, he goes, that conference, that thing in Raleigh, that was a real thing? He goes, yeah, man, we were there for 3 days. It's like, what? You know, his eyes turned into saucers. And so, no, I mean, look, any exposure, I shouldn't say any exposure is good exposure, because every once in a while, if it's a scandal, it can damage you, obviously. But anything that's even remotely constructive is good exposure. And so I've done, you know, all sorts of different little interviews and little projects here and there, and some stuff have gone by the wayside, and some have worked. But what I've learned is, like, look, just say yes to as many things as you can, and just keep your focus, and don't the popularity, that whole thing, that doesn't get to me, because I don't think of it like that. I don't get starstruck, and I don't, especially in myself, you know, my ego. No, I did not want to do this in the slightest. I didn't want to be at the front of this thing. I didn't want to be the spokesperson for this. And in fact, I try to defer as many as I can. I have tried. Oh my God. Like the National Geographic piece, I tried so desperately. It's like, I don't even want to go to LA. Just pick other people. And they begged me. It's like, look, we'll fly you down. You'll stay with us at the hotel. It'll be wonderful. It'll be great. It's like, all right. I mean, it was like I was being dragged into things. So everything for a reason. And wherever it's going to lead, I'm just going to stay as humble as possible. I don't care, you know, like I've done everything from major networks all the way down to junior high newspapers, literally. Junior high student newspapers. I don't care. You know, if they call me, the point is I don't call them. It's like, if somebody calls me and wants me to do something, it's like, yeah, if I have the time, I will absolutely do it. Because I feel so strongly about getting the word out, and whoever calls me for whatever reason, it's fate. And again, why I'm talking to you now.
Yeah, I picked this up from somebody. Is it true that you did some sort of a talk show or some sort of an interview within like a 2 hours notice?
Like a major talk show?
I think it might have been something minor, but you were just alerted of it.
Oh, yeah. I did. Well, I just did the University of Arkansas. Did that with barely 2 hours notice. Yes. In fact, I just did that 5 days ago. So what happened was the University of Arkansas decided they were going to show Behind the Curve in their main studio and theater. And I wrote them a quick thing. I said, hey, thanks for doing this. Really, really cool. And the media, they wrote back and said, "Oh man, the movie's gonna start here like really shortly. Can we have you come in and Skype in and do it?" And I said yes, and we did it, and I just posted it. Other things like, yeah, I don't care if it's short notice, then and I can squeeze it in, then I think it was meant to be. Like the commercial I did down in Melbourne, Australia, they gave me 10 days notice. They said, "Hey, would you like to shoot a TV commercial down in Australia?" And it's winter down there. It's not like I was going to be hitting the beaches. And I said, "Sure, why not?" And they go, "Okay, we're sending plane tickets. We need you down here." And it's like, you have to have a passport ready and the whole 9 yards. And I did. I think I worked a total of 9 hours and then spent the rest of the time, camping out in the apartment they rented for me and all this other stuff. But yeah, short notice, I don't mind. Again, if I have the time, I did. Some stuff doesn't even air. In 2016, I think, early 2016, I did a 40-minute CNN interview from a parking lot of a Walmart, where I was just on the phone with them, and nothing ever happened. It was just too soon. So I mean, other things, I did like with, I think, a 5-hour window. I did. You know who Russell Brand is?
No, let me see. Let me Google it.
British comedian. You'd recognize him. Been in a lot of movies. He was married to Katy Perry for a year.
I'm also a bit of a boomer, but yes, I do recognize him. All right,
yeah. Yeah. His team called me up like last minute, and because it was in Britain, like lunchtime, it was 3 a.m. here. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Sure, why not? Again, if it feels like it was meant to be, and I've got the time, I will absolutely do it. I'm just kind of looking through some of my stuff. I've done so many, I just lost count. I stopped counting basically after like 300.
Yeah, that's really crazy how you're able to do that on such a short notice. Me myself, I emailed you about 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And within 2 days, once you said yes, I then had to make a completely different lineup. I'm like, all right, now I got to get some co-hosts who can talk about conspiracy theories. And I spent like 2 days, around the clock trying to get that going on. And then the day comes, and look, it's just me and you, Coral Farmers at work, and Honk Buster somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of sooner rather than later. It's like, look, what's your earliest slot? I mean, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So, putting stuff that far out in advance, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, look, when can we do it? Let's just get it done now. If I've got the time, why the hell not? I mean, this is what I do all the time, all the day. I'm either scanning headlines, or I'm making Flat Earth videos, or I'm promoting Flat Earth stuff for other people, or just getting the word out. And like, for perfect example would be like when Mad Mike died in that crash. Rolling Stone contacted me fairly quickly. It's like, I try to tell people, it's like, look, you can't just put it off. I know that some people, it's a different era now where people like, they wait. It's like, oh, wait 3 or 4 days before they get back to an email. It's like, no, man, because there's some windows that just close down. And so if I'm near a place where I can send an email, I will shoot it off immediately. Just be like, okay, at least it's in their head and they have time to kind of work it out. It helps them as well. So,
yeah.
Anything else I can do for you?
No, I think I've taken up about 2 hours of your time.
Has it
I think
been
it's
2
been
hours?
a really good podcast. Yeah, it has been. Yeah. Time's just been flying. It was really fun. I do want to see, would you be interested in perhaps coming on for another event? Maybe it won't be a podcast, but some sort of thing in the future.
Sure.
I know there's this guy called Steve Anderson. I don't know if you've heard of him.
He sounds familiar. In fact, he sounds really familiar. What do you do?
He's a pretty notable preacher.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, is he the guy that
Flat
just
Earth.
hates us?
Yeah, he hates Flat Earth.
Oh, yeah, I know who Steve Anderson is.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe if I could get into contact with him, right?
Oh, he'll never talk with
see...
me. He would freaking lose his mind. Plus, he's doing it from a biblical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd do it, no question. But he'd probably be better off with. I mean, I could here's me deferring. He'd probably be better off going after one of our hardcore Christian guys, which would be like
Yeah.
Rob Skiba. Rob Skiba's excellent in that regards, and I think he'd be great. But if you set it up, if he wants to talk to me, that's fine. But he should probably choose if he wants to talk to anybody, because I think he'd want to talk to somebody who would do more biblical stuff. I mean, I could hold my own in a biblical thing,
Yeah.
but I'm not nearly as good as in chapter and verse, not even close compared to a lot of other people.
Oh yeah, that's not anything set in stone. I mean, of course, I would have to contact him first, and then after he sees that I had you on the podcast, he might turn around at me and say you're satanic.
Well, again, if he's listening, or if somebody shows in this clip or whatever, I've got nothing against Steve Anderson. I completely understand. You know, there are a lot of pastors out there that are worried about the congregation turning on them if they decide
Yeah.
to go down this road. They're scared of it. They're absolutely worried. Now I know some of them, like, they've got so much conviction in their interpretation of the Bible. That's fine. But for them, look, it's only one verse. There's one verse that every pastor is hanging their hat on, which is Isaiah 40:22, which is he who sits on the circle of the earth. Circle is not ball. It is not globe. It is not sphere. It's circle. And they use it literally. They use Isaiah 40:22 like it has veto power over everything. Literally everything else in the Bible. It's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You can't just use that one verse and hope that it's gonna save you. It's not. But if he's interested, by all means, I'd be happy to talk to him. I will be as civil as possible. I don't know if he can keep his temper, but if he does, that's fine. But I don't think that's him necessarily. I think he likes pounding on the pulpit and getting people worked up. I'm not going to fall for it, but if he wants to, that's fine.
Yeah, beyond that, I mean, any other future podcast,
Oh yeah,
if you would be interested to come on, I would definitely hit you up.
yeah. Just let me know.
There's a couple buddies that I would actually like to get talking to you because they're far more into conspiracy theories than I am. Like I said, Coral Farmer,
Oh, sure.
Honk Buster. I have a bunch of buddies that would just love to talk about this kind of stuff as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope that those guys. I'm sorry they missed it, but I hope they enjoyed what you and I did. And if they want to delve into anything further, happy to help.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you later. This has been the Not Political Podcast with Mark Sargent. Y'all can go ahead and check him out on YouTube. You do make YouTube videos, and I believe you're on BitChute as well, right?
It's on BitChute. I don't control that one, but yeah, it's on BitChute as well. My channel on YouTube is called Mark Sargent. You could just type in Flat Earth Mark, you'll find it. And I'm trying to do this more often than not, and that is if you're into apps, try to check out the Flat Earth Sun and Moon Zodiac Clock app, done by a friend of mine. I don't make a freaking dime off of it, but it's really, really cool. So that's what I'm trying to endorse nowadays.
All right. Yeah, this has been really fun. I'll see you another time.
Okay, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Bye.